Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video. If you are on a smaller screen like a mobile device, if you're on a larger screen like a laptop, desktop computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So if I scroll down here, we'll see who we'll be starting with. I'm going to be starting with John Z today. But first, I wanted to talk about something real quick that I know a lot of you struggle with. So how do we get lots of lag in the downswing? I know a lot of you struggle with getting that club to really cast at the start of the downswing, and you lose a lot of power. You have to swing with all arms. You get kind of scoopy at impact, kind of flippy at impact. You just kind of get those really, really weak shots that nobody wants. If you want to get that really good compression on the ball, that heavy hit, you want that ball to feel like a marshmallow when it hits the face. You got to get some lag in the swing. So when we look at tour players, what we're going to see is at the top of the swing, they have this angle between their lead arm and the shaft, and then that angle gets smaller in the start of the downswing, right? And then from about in here is when that actually starts to release. And typically when we look at tour players, we're going to see when the hands get around in front of the lead thigh, the trail thigh, that club's pretty close to parallel to the ground. When I look at my students, when I look at amateur players, when I struggled with lag myself, my swing looked like this. At this point in the swing, the lag was releasing a little bit from the top already. I didn't have much of an angle at this point at lead arm parallel and downswing. When I got my hands to in front of my trail thigh, the club was already past parallel, and then I didn't have a lot of shaft lean at impact. I didn't have as much compression that I wanted to have. So it wasn't until I started working on getting some really good lag that I was able to get some really good forward shaft lean and compression. So I'm going to go over a great drill for you today that really helped me, and I know has really helped a lot of my students as well to create lots of lag in the swing. Because there's a huge mistake, a huge mistake that everyone makes, basically everyone, myself and pretty much every single student that I've ever worked on getting lag with. There's a huge mistake that they all make, and that mistake is really trying to get that lag in the backswing, right? So you've probably heard of the wide, narrow, wide drill, the drill where you go really wide with the club head in the backswing, then you try to get really, really narrow in the downswing, and then really wide in the follow through, right? Well, that drill can be really helpful if you do it correctly, but pretty much everybody does it wrong. Pretty much everybody, they go wide in the beginning of the backswing, right? But toward the end of the downswing, they're trying to get narrow really early. And what ends up happening is they set the wrist at the top. So they get this angle between the arm and the shaft here, the lead arm and the shaft. They get that angle the tightest at the top. And then from there, they try to keep that. But there's just once you create that sharpest angle, it's going to release from there, right? It's not going to be as narrow as what you want it. So if you imagine, if you stretch out something as much as you possibly can, you reach its maximum point, and then you let it go, it's going to retract back, right? That's what's happening when you get this maximum angle, right? You're getting those angles to the sharpest point, and then right from there, that's the moment they're going to want to start releasing. So if you do that at the top of the swing, you're going to do pretty much the same thing that you've always done if you're casting the club, and you're going to start casting the club right away. So what we have to do is we have to get this angle between the arm and the shaft. We need to get that angle the sharpest as late as we possibly can. So when you do the wide, narrow, wide drill, you have to do it in this way. I would actually almost call it the wide, wide, narrow, wide drill. The reason for that is you want to go up to the top wide, right? So I don't want you to set the wrist at all when you go up to the top. This is going to feel not very powerful initially, but once you do it a few times, it's going to start feeling more powerful because you're going to get that late wrist set and that whip through contact, right? So we want to go nice and wide at the beginning, right? So we're going to get that good shoulder turn. And it just seems really weak because the club head's way out there instead of being back here. But this is just an exaggeration to get this drill working well. So we want to go nice and wide, right? So you see I have a good big shoulder turn. My hands have gone back pretty good, but I have that wide angle there. Now what I want you to feel like is initially in the downswing, I also want you to go wide, right? So I want you to keep that wide until your lead arm gets parallel to the ground. So wide in the backswing, wide in the start of the downswing. And then from here, I want you to slowly narrow that angle. So it's almost like the club is sliding down a hill. That's what you want to feel like. And you can see when I do that, if I hold this club with my right hand like this, and I have it basically at the point of where I would be lead arm parallel to the ground. And I just let this club kind of slide down the ground. Look at that angle between my lead arm and the shaft. See how it's getting smaller, 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 smaller. It's getting smaller really, really late, right? We want that to happen in this area, but for most of you, pretty much everybody who's casting the club, that sharpest angle is happening out here. So we need to actually try to get it to happen down here, right, in order for it to be right here. So this drill is going to really help you to do that. So I want you to get that late wrist set as long as you possibly can until your hands are over the ball. We're getting that angle sharper and sharper. And then from there, that's when you rotate through and get wide with it, right? So do some reps where you go up to the top, pause, big, big shoulder turn, club out there really, really wide. And then you're going to start your downswing, and I want you to keep the club wide until your lead arm is parallel to the ground. And then from there, I want you to slowly set the angle until your hands get to the ball. So that's going to be like this. So see how that angle from there is getting smaller? It's getting smaller until my hands get over the ball, and I have this crazy angle. Remember when we talked about earlier, tour players, when their hands are in front of their trail thigh, the club is parallel. We're just getting it above the ball, right? So we're really trying to get that angle as sharp as we possibly can. Some of you may be more flexible than me with your arms and your wrists and things like that, and may be able to create a sharper angle than I can. But when I go here and there, and I sharpen that angle, that's about as good as I can do, a little above parallel. That's as much as my wrists are going to allow me to do. And then from there, I'm going to swing through into the full finish. Now, when you're going from this really, the wide to wide position, and you're starting to narrow it slowly, what you're going to feel like in your hands is that you're pushing out with your lead hand and you're pulling in with your trail hand, right? So if I do that, see how that creates, if I separate my hands and I do that, you can see how that creates a really sharp angle there. Really, really sharp angle as I'm coming down. So if I put my hands together, that's the same thing I want to do. I want to do that slowly as I get down here. Now, what I don't want you to do is go down here and then set it and then bring it down here. I want you to slowly set. I want you to get that angle, the sharpest, as late as you possibly can, preferably somewhere over the golf ball. So here, there, wide, and then there, you can see the angle got sharper all the way to there. I didn't go here and then sharpen it and bring it down. It got sharper. So it's going to feel really weak because you're used to really throwing the club at the ball. But this is going to feel like you're moving your hands toward the ball, but the club head is actually feeling like it's moving away from the ball. See, as I'm doing that, the club head's not really getting much closer to the golf ball. So that's what it's going to feel like. And then from here, you can really turn through and whip that club through and get lots of power. So I want you to do 10, 15 reps where we're going up to the top, pausing. We're going down lead arm parallel, pausing, still wide. Then from lead arm parallel, we're going to create this really sharp angle all the way to the hands get in over top of the ball. And then from there, we're going to turn through and let that release wide out in front. Once you do about 10, 15 of those, and we're starting to get comfortable with that, I want you to do it in one fluid motion, but try to do it in almost like a 10-second swing. So that would look something like this, where I go here, here, right? And do it in like a, that's probably not quite 10 seconds, but I want you to do it really, really slow and get the same motion. Check it on camera. Look on face on. See if that looks, like what we're trying to do. See if that angle is getting the sharpest right here and then releasing out in front. Do about 10, 15 of those and then start to build up the speed from there. Add a little, once it looks good on video, add a little bit of speed. See if you can do it then. If it doesn't look good on video, try to get it to look good on video before you add more speed. You just keep adding speed until basically you look on camera and you're going to see it's going to feel like you're doing exactly what we're talking about here, right? But the reality is when you look on camera, when you build up the speed, it's probably going to look something more like this, right? And you're going to look like you have tons of lag in the downswing. But I'm telling you, it's going to feel like you're going like this as you're coming down into the golf ball. That's what it felt like to me, and I know that's what it feels like to a lot of my students. So work through that lag drill, get to where you can do it in a practice swing and it looks good. And then once you're able to do it in a practice swing, then try to add the golf ball and see if you can do it with the golf ball there. It's going to feel like you don't know where the club head is, and that's completely fine. It's okay. You may hit a bad shot the first time or the first several times that you do it. Just pay attention to what's happening on those bad shots, right? So if you top it, that would be normal, right? If you were to top this shot, that would be completely normal, because when you create lots of lag, you shorten this radius of the club to the ball. So it's going to be coming in higher. So what you have to do is you're going to have to get down lower. So if you do top it, that'd be just one of the things that could happen. Then you need to feel like you're getting down lower to the golf ball. What you don't want to do is release. That's what you're trying not to do, is release the club to get to the golf ball. Keep that lag and just get down lower to the golf ball. I'm telling you, once you get this right, it's going to feel like that ball is going to feel like a marshmallow, compressing on the face when that happens. Now, what we can't do is we can't stop here. We can't stop at just getting some lag, because when a lot of people do this drill, the way that they get lag is they really open the face by really cupping that lead wrist. And what we want, you can see when I do that, I can get a really sharp angle. But what we want to do is we want to shallow out the club, and we want to get some bow in that wrist, because that's going to help square the face. And you can see if I go like this when I'm coming down, I have this club vertical, really steep, I can create that nice sharp angle, and it looks great on video. But the problem is that I'm coming down steep, I'm going to want to back up out of it and throw it. So what we have to do is we have to get this club shallowing out. And when you get the club shallowed out, what I mean by shallowing out, I mean going like this, right? So if you're coming down, you're getting that club shallowed out. When I do that, I actually get more lag when I do that. I have more of an appearance of lag when I do that. So you can see when I get that really lagging behind, or when I get it really, really shallowed out and lagging behind, I have lots and lots of lag. If I get steep, I have less lag. Shallowed out, I have more lag. So this is what we call the move on the website. There's a course with a series of drills that work you through getting that club shallowed out and getting that club face squared up. So once you get all that lag in your swing, and once you get this club nice and shallowed out, the square club face, all you really have to do is turn through the golf ball. You're going to be able to get lots of forward shaft lean and compression. So if you work on this drill and you see you're coming down steep and you're leaving that face open, you got to pair it with the move. You got to work on specifically the tennis racket drill in the move course. It's a great drill to work on in there. Now, to get to the move course, all you have to do, if you're a member of the website, is click this is a course that's included with your membership. You click the instruction tab and then go to Top Speed Golf System and then click the move and get started on the drill. So do this lag drill, get tons of lag, and then work through that move course that's included with your membership to get lots of lag, or gets lots of continuous lag in your swing, and getting that club face squared up a lot earlier in the swing as well. All right, so like I mentioned, we're going to start here with John Z. So John Z says, "Hi Q, is it possible to explain the amount of shoulder tilt in the backswing in degrees? Would it be the same regardless of the length of the club? Hope the question is understandable enough to get an explanation on shoulder tilt as you take the club back." It's going to it changes by a lot of things. So it's going to change by you. You're taller, shorter, right? It's also going to change by the club. So the longer the club is, the more upright that shoulder tilt's going to be. The shorter the club is, the longer the club is, the more flat that shoulder tilt's going to be. And the shorter the club, the more tilt you're going to be. So if I was really, really tall, right, and I was hitting a wedge, I would have a lot of shoulder tilt, right? Because the club would be shorter, than it would be on someone who's 5'8", right? And if I was 6'8" versus 5'8", I would have to bend over the ball a little bit more. You could get club. Typically you're going to have clubs that are a little bit longer, but they're going to still be shorter in proportion to how tall you are, right? So you're not going to make a club a foot longer, for someone who's 6'8" versus someone who's 5'8", and you're not going to make a club that's 4 inches shorter, 5 inches shorter for someone who's a little bit shorter than average height, someone who's maybe like 5'7" or 5'8". So I think most clubs are they're made for people that are 5'10" to 6 feet, kind of like the standard length of clubs. So they're probably not going to be that much different for someone who's might make clubs an inch long for someone who's like 6'3", right? For someone who's 6'8", might be 2 inch long, but it's not quite in the same proportion. If you understand what I'm saying there. So if you're taller, you're generally going to bend over to the ball more. You're generally going to have more shoulder tilt than someone who's shorter. If you're shorter, you're going to be a little bit flatter. So there's no exact degrees with every single club. What I would recommend doing is, you know what your height is, right? What I'd recommend doing is go to YouTube and search a player that is about your same size, about your same height, and then look at you can find YouTube videos of their kind of shoulder tilts throughout the swing. That's what I would recommend. So Roy McIlroy, I think he's around 5'8", 5'9", something like that. So if you're around that height, that would probably be a good person to look at. Adam Scott, I think he's around 6 foot, something like that, maybe 6'1". He would be a good guy to look at if you're in that area. If you're taller, Tony Finau, I think he's 6'3", 6'4", something like that. He would be a good guy to maybe look at if you're taller. So those are just some examples of shoulder tilts, and then you can typically look up videos by the club. You can look at typically they'll tell you this is a 6-iron, or this is a driver, this is a wedge, or something like that, and you can see kind of what the tilts are and things like that. So that's what I would recommend doing, because there's no exact specific number that you need to be at. And even people that are, you take two people that are 5'8", two tour players that are maybe 5'8", or something like that. So you take Luke Donald and you take Roy McIlroy. Their shoulder tilts are probably not exactly the same. They can differ a little bit. So it's all about, basically, does your shoulder tilt allow you to do the things that you need to in the swing? What I will tell you is that your shoulders should not be level. If your shoulders are level at the top of the swing, that's going to lead to typically chopping down into the golf ball and over the top, flip, not opening up the body and things like that, if you get to where your shoulders are really level at the top. So Louis V says, could you talk a little about the arc of the swing on the back and downswing and how this can affect ball flight and distance? So if you imagine the path of your club is almost like I have a hula hoop around me, right? And that hula hoop is on a tilt that creates a plane, right? So that's how I would kind of imagine the plane of the club, is like it's a hula hoop that's on a tilt, right? So if I get my hula hoop that's tilted this way and I angle it out to the right, right? So I angle it to where it's kind of pointing out to the right. That's going to get my path working into out, the path of my club working into out relative to my target line. And that's typically going to lead to draws and pushes and things like that. It could lead to hooks and things like that, depending on what that is relative to the face, right? And if I get my hula hoop angle to the left, if I'm right-handed, that's going to get my path going more out to in. That's going to typically be pulls, fades, slices, and things like that. It could also be pull hooks. It just depends on how your face is oriented to that path. But typically that arc, that club, that arc, if you imagine how it's swinging on a hula hoop, if you tilt that in a direction, that's typically going to affect the path of the club and get it to where it's, it's working, into out or out to in. Now that's for shots that are hit off the ground. Now with the driver, because you're missing the ground and generally you're hitting up on the golf ball, if you imagine a hula hoop, right? It reaches the bottom of the arc and then starts to work back up. Well, if you imagine it this way, if it reaches the bottom out and starts to work back up, that club's actually working to the left a little bit, right? So typically with the driver, because you're hitting up on it a little bit, you want to have that arc, that hula hoop angled more that way. So that way when it starts to work back up, it's not too much, it's not out to in, right? That's going to lead to slices. It's actually going to be a little bit in to out. So that way you can hit up on it and have a square path, but it's going to feel more into out compared to what your irons might be, because you're hitting up on the ball. Whereas with iron, it's a little bit different, right? Typically you're hitting the ball before it reaches the bottom of the arc, right? So you may actually need to feel, depending on, most people probably don't need to feel this because they struggle with coming over the top to begin with. But if you are someone who's overhooking and overdrawing your clubs, you may want to consider, feeling like you're coming over the top a little bit to get that path get that hula hoop tilted to the left a little bit, because you're hitting the ground, you're hitting the ball before you hit the ground. And then he goes on to say, for example, at the top of the backswing, should my hand be behind my head if looking from down the line angle? So at the top of the backswing, it can be anywhere. It just has to get back. So if you imagine I have that hula hoop plane, right? The hands just have to get back. The hands and the club just have to get back on that plane, specifically really the club head. The most important thing is to get that club head back on that plane. So whether you have the club head way up here and then you bring it down onto that plane, or you have it here and it's already on that plane, it's really personal preference. Now, there are pros and cons to doing that, right? So if you get your hands up higher and the club up higher, you can typically create more speed and get more distance because you have more time and space to accelerate the club. If you imagine you're going sledding, right? Some of you may be able to do that right now with all the winter storms going on in the United States. But if you were going sledding and you wanted to have the most speed at the bottom of that hill, well, you wouldn't pick a little short and flat hill. You would pick the tallest and steepest hill you could find to be able to create the most speed at the bottom. It's no different in your golf swing. If you're trying to create the most speed at the bottom, you want to get your hands in the club head as high as you can to be able to create that speed. If you have them lower, flatter and lower, typically it's going to lead to less speed, but it may be easier to get that club on plane. So you have to find that happy medium that works for you. If you look on tour, you're going to see all kinds of different stuff. You're going to see Bubba Watson, Dustin Johnson way up here, then they shallow it out a ton, and then you're going to see someone like Matt Kuchar who gets the club basically really, really flat back here and then brings it down plane. You're going to maybe see someone like John Rahm, right? He gets his hands up, the club's really, really laid off, and he shallows out from there. Daniel Berger, right? There's lots of ways to make it work, but you have to look at what's most important to you, right? Daniel Berger and John Rahm, they have plenty of club head speed. Matt Kuchar could probably use a little bit more, but that's not something that's super important to him. Maybe it should be, but it's not something that obviously he's an Olympian and did what do you win, the bronze medal or something like that. So there's lots of ways to do it. You have to find what works best for you. You have to prioritize what's most important for you. So James M says, how do I find your video, specifically the one where you mentioned rotating the rib cage? You're talking about office hours videos. We have the office hours videos archived if you're looking for that. The way that you can watch archived office hours. Now, I wouldn't be able to tell you what one specifically I talk about rib cage. I talk about the rib cage a lot. There's probably 50 office hours where I mention the rib cage. So unfortunately, I won't be able to tell you the specific one that you might be looking for. But if you know what day it was on and about at what point in the office hours, you could find it fairly easily. You can go to the office hours highlights page. So if you go to the top of the screen there, you go to the office hours tab and then select the office hours highlights. From there, it'll take you to the office hours highlights page. If you go below, there's going to be like 5 highlights there. And then you'll see there's a video screen there where you can select the specific day. It's a playlist where you can select a specific day. But we talk about the rib cage in a lot of videos, specifically the power turn. We talk about the rib cage a lot, turning the rib cage. So if you're wanting to work on getting a better turn, whether it be your hips, your shoulders, your rib cage, it's all basically in the power turn course. So if you want to check that out, click the instruction tab at the top of the screen. That'll take you, and then click the Top Speed Golf System, and then click the power turn course. That's going to help you start getting your rib cage turning a lot better. So Tom W says, Q reviewing video, and it appears that my torso and head lower and cover the ball as I begin the downswing with the club. The club is shallowing out. That said, it all starts falling apart at my left arm, parallel to the ground and moving towards impact. Hips lose tush line, and any potential side bend disappears as my body begins to stand up through impact and release. I'm still getting 170 miles per hour, and then cuts off after that. So basically, what you mentioned there is exactly what you want to work on. So maybe you're getting to right here, right? Club shallowed out, everything looks great. But then from there, you tuck under and probably throw and release. So you can get good speed, from doing that. Most of your speed comes from your arms, right? So if you don't rotate your hips, and get any speed from your lower body, then you got to get it from the way that you're talking about, right? Where you are throwing the arms and then moving away from the golf ball. Because moving away from the ball with your chest is a way to create speed. Because if you imagine, if you stayed in your posture, right? Let's say you stayed in your posture, you didn't move away from the golf ball, and you kept your tush line, but you didn't rotate. You just kind of went like this, right? It's not going to have as much speed because you're not pulling away from the golf ball. So that would be like if I took the club and I went like this and I just dropped it, that has a certain amount of speed. And now let's say I'm going to drop it, but I'm going to pull up with my hand, with my fingers at the same time. So I'm going to drop it and pull up. You can see how that created more speed when I did that. So that's what's happening when you are throwing the club and you're pulling away from it. That's speeding up the club. Now, is that the best way to get speed? No, because you're going to typically release the club early when you do that. And you're not going to typically have the impact variables that you want. It's going to be hard to control things. You're not going to be as consistent. But if you can't move your hips, right? If you can't move your hips in the proper way, maybe you're physically not capable, then that's just what you have to do to get speed. I'd much rather you do that than not get speed and be just as inconsistent. You may as well have some speed and hit it further and be just as inconsistent if you didn't, right? So that's how I would work at. Now, if you are physically capable, then I would really work on trying to basically get more flex into your legs and basically feel like your backside. Because once your backside starts to tuck under, you're not going to be able to rotate. So what I would try to feel like, and this is what I talked about last week in the office hours highlight, is that when you're starting down, you want to there's an angle that's created between your thighs and your spine. And you want to get that angle to be as small as possible, almost like you're a book. You're an open book at the top, and then the spine of the book is basically your hips, your belt line. And then when you start the downswing, you want to close that book, right? So I would really feel like you're almost going like this, like you're twisting into the ground and you're pushing your backside out. That's what I would try to feel like is happening, and feel like you never, ever open that book, right? That book stays closed all the way through. Now, if you feel like you're going like this, right, the reality is what you'll probably do is something more like this, right? Whereas right now, you'll do something, if you feel that exaggerated feeling, you'll probably do something that's more like this, right, which is what you want. Whereas right now, you're probably doing something more like that, where you're tucking under right away. So I would really, really feel like do some practice swings where you really feel like you're pushing your backside out, right? And you're really, really trying to push your backside out and rotate and getting this angle as sharp as you possibly can and get down low to the ground. So that way you can release that club out in front. Now, if you do the same thing with your hands and your arms and you do that, well, you're just going to slam the club into the ground. So you need to make sure that when you do that, that you get the club, when you get opening up, that you're feeling that club release out in front and not just do the same thing with your arms and hands and just slam it into the ground. So David D says, good morning, Q. What is the best practice for honing in your iron wedges? Does that process differ from long, mid, short irons? And how does course terrain features and weather, specifically wind, after those yardages when considering club selection for a given shot? That's really, it just comes with experience going out and playing. But if you're wanting to practice that, I would just go out to the range and I would use a rangefinder or something so you can get the actual yardage of whatever. Hopefully your range has targets. If you don't have targets, it's going to be tough. But hopefully your range has flags or something out there, targets that you can scope. And what I would do is I would do some variability training. So let's say, a 6-iron for me is about 190 yards, right? That's about how much I carry a 6-iron. So I would try to find a target out there that was 160. And I would just kind of see where, so let's say let me do it in this way. So let's say I put my scope out there, and I see I have 150 yards, right? I have a target that's 150 yards. Well, for me, that's just like a normal 9-iron, like 150 yards. That's just a normal, no conditions messing with it, not into the wind, nothing like that. That's just a 9-iron. So let's imagine that there's no real big conditions or anything like that going on either. Not a lot of wind. I'd be able, if I just hit a normal solid 9-iron, it's going to get right there to the target. So what I would recommend doing is I would try to take one swing where you try to land it short of it. So you take a full swing 9-iron, or really it doesn't even have to be a full swing. It just has to be, you just have to hit it, let's say 5 yards short of it, right? So I'm just going to take a 9-iron. It might be a easy 9-iron. I might take an easier swing, or I might take a shorter swing. It's really up to you. But whatever you have to do to hit that 9-iron, 5 yards shorter. So you're hitting it 145 yards, right? So now I'm going to try to hit that shot. And if I hit it too good, right? If I hit it too hard and it goes 150, then I have to adjust my feel to get the desired result. I maybe need to feel like I'm swinging shorter. Maybe you choke up on the club, right? Maybe you take the same swing. So you just have to find a way. There's lots of ways to do it. You can swing softer. You can swing shorter, which in turn will make you swing a little bit softer. You can choke up on the club, which will also, you have to take the speed out of the club head, right? That's what I'd be trying to do. Just trying to vary your speed that you're putting into the club head. And you can do that by taking an easier swing, a shorter swing, or a choked up swing, or a combination of any of those things. But whatever you got to do to take 5 yards off of it is what you're trying to do. And then I would do one where I'm trying to put more speed into the club to hit it 5 yards over. So I try to hit a 155-yard 9-iron shot. So that might be trying to get a much bigger turn. That might be, you can also try to de-loft it a little bit to get it to go 155 yards, right? That might be swinging harder, right? That there's lots of things that you can do there to try to get it, to try to muscle one up 155. And then I would try to take one in between. So that's how you can kind of hone it in. And you can do that with all your clubs. You do that with your 9-iron, and then I would pick a different target, right? Let's say I got one that's 170, right? Well, 170 would be a pretty big, that'd be like a huge 8-iron for me. That would probably be like a choked up 7-iron. So it's already an easy 7-iron for me, right? To do that. So what I would do, I would have to hit a super easy 7-iron to hit it 165, right? And I would have to hit a normal 7-iron to hit it 175, and basically an easy 7-iron to hit it right at my target. So what I do is I just pick your targets and find the club that you can hit that distance and try to hit it past it, short of it, and right at it, and do what's called win, pass, lose, stay, where if your win pass means that if you're successful, you move on to the next task. So let's say you're doing the 145, you're going to the 150, you try for the 145-yard shot, you're successful, you go on to the next task. If you lose stay means if you're not successful, you have to make an adjustment and try again. And it may not be necessarily, you may chunk it and it may not make it there. And the adjustment might be, okay, don't chunk it this time, right? Get a better weight shift or whatever it might be. So that's what you got to look at. And then you can take it to the next level by hitting it high, hitting it low, right? By hitting draws and fades and doing the same kind of thing. So that's kind of how you dial those things in for sure. Now, as far as the conditions are concerned, you're not going to be able to change the conditions, right? When you go out there, the conditions are just going to be the conditions. So you're going to have to adjust. If you're out there and all of a sudden the wind picks up and it's in your face, well, you're going to have to muscle it up more, right? Or maybe it might be switching clubs. You may find out, okay, well, now the wind's picked up and it's in my face. I'm hitting a 9-iron. There's no way I'm even going to get a 9-iron 145 yards. So I need to try to hit the shot with an 8-iron, right? So that's how you work through it. So I would work through trying to alter your distances, hit it to different distances, switch clubs, get the 3 successful shots, switch clubs, go to a different target. And you can do that with every club in your bag. All right, so Darren I says, I've been working hard to improve my game, and you guys at Top Speed Golf have been great. I've heard that random practice is more effective at learning and retaining skills than block practice. What can I do to have? What can I? What? Sorry, I can't read today. What can I do? What can I do? You have to do randomize my time at the range. Sorry, that sentence was a little hard to read. So basically, to do random practice, it would be similar to what I just talked about, right? So random practice could be hitting to different targets, just randomly hitting to a different target. So let's say you put one club in your hand. Let's say I got a 7-iron. I got a 100-yard target. I got 125. I got 150. I got 175, right? So what you can do is you can hit shots with that same club to all those different targets. So that wouldn't necessarily be completely random, but that would be mainly what helps you. Here's what block practice is. Block practice is where you get that 7-iron in your hand and you hit it. You try to hit it dead straight to that 175-yard target over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? You just do it repetitive. And there is some merit to doing that, but you're going to cap your potential when you do that. It's not as good for learning and retaining skills. So what you want to do is change what you're doing at the target. So that might be hitting the different targets. That might be switching the club on every swing. That might be hitting draws and fades. That might be hitting a high shot, a low shot. That's basically what you want to do is change what you're doing. Don't sit there and do the same thing over and over and over and over again. You have to change what you're doing on every single shot to be able to retain the skills. That's why a lot of people have a hard time taking their range game to the golf course, because on the range, they're hitting the same shot to the same target with the same club over and over and over again. When you do that, you can just get in a groove, right? You can just get in a groove and hit the shots, and you're listening to your music. You're just, having a good time. And that's all great. You feel like you're hitting great shots. And then you go out on the course, things change. You're on different terrain. The wind's in a different direction. You're switching clubs every time. There was time between the last shot and this shot. Everything's changed. So that's how you're going to retain skills and have better learning and more effective practice, is by randomizing what you're doing. One thing that I like to do, especially for wedges, is you can take a deck of cards with you, and you can draw from the deck. And let's say I draw a 5, right? I have to hit a 50-yard shot. And let's say I draw another card and it's 8, I got to hit an 80-yard shot, right? And let's say I draw a 2, it's a 20-yard shot. An ace, it's a 10-yard shot. Now you can take out any cards you want if you don't want to work on 10 and 20-yard shots, but all the face cards are basically 100-yard shots, and you can take out some of the face cards so that you don't get so many 100-yard shots. But that'd be a great way to completely randomize your practice, because you don't know what you're going to do, right? That would be truly random practice. You're changing. The key to learning, retaining skills is not just random practice, but differential practice and variable practice and things like that. That's how you really retain a lot of skills. And we have that sprinkled in throughout the Top Speed Golf system. In the Stable Fluid Spine course, for example, and one of the tests where we have our spine tilt that we want, and we take swings where we have way too much, and then we take swings where we're leaning toward the target, right? So that's variability training, where you're practicing both ends of the spectrum, and that gives you an overall sense and feel and awareness of where this is, where this spine tilt, where the good spine tilt is. So Dean A says, any secrets, tricks to lag putting? How do pros control distance so well? The key to lag putting is hitting the putt solid. That's really the key to it, and having a good feel for the terrain. So what I would recommend doing, especially if you have a longer putt, is to walk the putt, right? So if you have like a 30, 40-foot putt, start at your golf ball. So pretend like I'm standing over a putt here. I'll grab my putter, and we're going to just have to use our imagination here and pretend like this is a 40-footer, right? And I do this not only for 40-footers. I do that, this is like a 6-footer. I would do that for this putt as well. So basically what I would do is I get behind it and I get an idea, okay, what's going on with the terrain? Is it going this way? Is it double braking? What ways is it all going? So I get a good sense and feel for it. Is it uphill? What does it look like to me? So now I'm playing a movie in my mind of what this is going to look like. And that can change, but I'm just wanting to get an initial, okay, this is what it looks like to me right now. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk around the putt. Now, when I'm walking around the path of the putt, I'm getting a sense and feel. Now, if this is a big bender, a big left or right bender, I'm not going to start walking right here. I'm going to walk, around, to the left of where I think the path of the putt's going to be, right? So that's what, or you can do it the other way too. You can walk to the right. It's up to you. But I just walk around it. So if in my mind I look at this and I think, okay, this is going to be kind of a, outside left. I need to start this probably about 6 inches left of the hole to get it to break where I want to into the hole. So I'm kind of looking at this and I'm feeling when I'm walking, I'm feeling in my feet. Okay, is this uphill? Is it side hill? What's going on with my feet? And I kind of walk around it. And you'll be surprised at how well you can sense what's going on, in your feet. And you can really feel, what's going on there and be able to adjust it. What I also look at is the grain. So when you look at the hole, you can see where the grain is pointing. Now, if you're playing really, really fast greens, the grain doesn't make a huge difference. It makes a bigger difference on slower greens. But you can look at where the grain is. So if you have a downhill putt and you're putting down the grain, right, it's going to be pretty fast, right? Whereas if you have an uphill putt, it's into the grain, you're probably going to need to hit it a little bit harder than what you need to. So checking out the grain, that's a hard thing to explain, but basically you look at the direction the grass is going on the cup. So one part of the cup, they'll have, and depending on the kind of grass, some grass is more grainy than others. But basically, if you look at if one side of the cup's going to be nicely cut, and then one part of the cup's going to be kind of a little bit more, it's not going to be as sharp of an edge there. So the one that has a sharper edge, that's kind of the direction, the grain. So imagine on this part of the cup, that's where the sharpest, and then it's kind of sparse over here. That means that the grain's kind of growing that way, right? So if I have a left to right putt and the grain's going in that direction, it may break a little bit more than what I think. And I'm also feeling in my feet, okay, is it breaking more than I originally thought in my feet as well? Is this downhill? Is this uphill? So now I come back, and with that new information, if there is new information, it's either going to confirm of what I originally thought, or there's going to be some new information, right? And I'm going to kind of repaint that picture in my mind, and I'm going to make that putt. So if you do that, you got to paint a picture in your mind of what's going on, right? And then what you want to do is make sure that you hit the putt solid, especially on longer putts. If you have a longer putt, see on a short putt, right, I can hit this way off the toe, and it's not going to be that big of a deal, right? I'll probably miss the putt and leave it short, but I have a tap in. But if I have a 30, 40 footer, right, and I hit this ball way off the toe, it's only going to get, 60%, 70% of the way to the hole. And now I still have like a 10, 12 footer left, right? So on longer putts, it's imperative that you hit that putt solid. So I really, really focus on, having the right speed and, having the right stroke, and then, to give you the right speed. So I kind of do some practice kind of like this to get a feel. Okay, this is how hard I'm going to have to swing. And then when you do that, you have to hit it in the center of the face. So really focus on taking that same stroke and then hitting it in the center of the face to get that, nice solid strike. Because if you hit it on the heel or the toe, the ball's not going to get there. It's going to end up being short. So that's what I'd recommend doing for lag putting. Walk the length of the hole, paint the picture in your mind, make sure, and then putt to the picture, as Tiger talked about, putt to the picture, as what his dad told him, and make sure that you hit it solid in the center of the face. If any of those things are off, you're probably not going to have a tap in, or you're not going to have a chance to make it. All right, so let's keep answering some questions here. So Claudio G says, regarding practice for topic 1.5 spine alignment, 1,000 reps is recommended using variable technique. In what sequence do you recommend doing the variable tilt? One proper tilt by one excess tilt, then one reverse tilt, or 5 of each, etc.? And does the 1,000 reps apply to only good reps? So I would do it different every time. So I do 1 good, 1 bad, then 1 in between. I wouldn't do 5 bad, then 5 good, then 5 in between. I would alternate. And then as far as how many reps you need to do, really, 1,000 reps is kind of an arbitrary number. It's not like you're going to do 1,000 reps and then you're going to nail it. Or it could take 100 reps. It could take 10,000 reps. So you need to do, really the answer to that question is you do as many reps as it takes. And you're going to have to kind of be your own. I know you're looking for, I want a specific number, but if that's the case, sure, 1,000 good reps. But like I said, that could be the number that you need, or it could be more than the number you could need. It could be short of the number you need. It could be the exact number that you need to get it right. But 1,000 reps is basically just kind of a recommendation. You're going to have to kind of listen to your body, look at the video, see what's going on there to know exactly how many you need to do. So John S says, "Hi Q, I've gained 30 yards on my drives by having better angle of attack and later release, learning through TSG. Awesome. Looking forward to doing some speed training. Also, perhaps there's another 30 yards still in the bag. Your thoughts on technique versus swinging harder?" There's going to be a mix of technique in there so swinging harder is just part of the 20-minute distance fix. Within there, we have technique things, right? So we have bigger shoulder turn. That's technique. We have lag. That's technique. We have, weight shift and sequencing. That's technique as well. So there's a good mix. You got to have both, right? Your technique is what puts you in a better position to be able to create speed. And then the swing harder is just the effort part of it. So if you put those together, then you can get the best of both worlds for sure. So Warren D says, "I joined late today, so you may have addressed my previously submitted question. Do you recommend a specific rangefinder or type of rangefinder?" I don't have any. I'm not sponsored by anybody or anything like that. But I've only used 2 types of rangefinders. I've used the Bushnell. I had a Bushnell when I was in college, the Pin Seeker. I still have it and it still works. It's just not as easy to use as some of the ones that have come out recently. But it still works great. I used it for a long time. That thing was a tank. A friend of mine uses it now. I just gave it to him. So yeah, it's a great rangefinder. I imagine Bushnell's newer rangefinders are good as well, if they're anything like the one that they made 12 years ago. I tell you, I probably used that thing for 10 years. So I'd say that's a pretty good life, and it's still being used. And then I think right now I think it's a Nikon, I think is what I use. Nikon stabilizer. It's awesome. It's really good. It does, it kind of locks on to your target. So if you have kind of shaky hands, right? If you have shaky hands, this one can be a really good one for you, because it will kind of lock on to the flag. Like it can kind of you can have it move around a little bit and it'll lock onto the flag. My old Bushnell, like you had to be on longer shots. It can be really tough to get it to kind of lock on, to get it to hit the flag, because it doesn't stabilize for you. So I recommend that Nikon one I think it's called Nikon Stabilizer or something like that. It's awesome. It also does slope. You can turn that off, but it also does slope and things like that. But those are really the only ones I've used. I know that Clay has used, there's a Swing Caddy one that he used, and I haven't used it, but he didn't have any complaints about it. I didn't hear any complaints about it. So really, I think that they're all pretty good. It's not, the technology of it isn't anything groundbreaking. So basically what happens is it shoots out a laser, and then the laser bounces back and it measures the amount of time that it took for it to come back. So that mechanism's in all of them. So, I mean, I imagine they're all pretty good for the most part. The only thing I would say is maybe if you buy kind of a cheap one, it may be cheaply made. It may not last. It may not, if you drop it, it may break or something like that. Whereas That Bushnell one I had, I can't tell you how many times I dropped that thing. It fell out of the cart, hit the cart path, was rained on. I mean, that thing was an absolute tank. I don't see the Nikon one that I have now being able to take that kind of beating. It's a little bit smaller. It seems it's kind of more plasticky, but I still think it's a very high quality. I just don't know that if I dropped it as many times. I keep it in my bag now and zip it up. Whereas I used to have my Bushnell, I would have it in the cart, and sometimes you hit a bump and the cart would throw it out. But yeah, those Bushnell and Nikon would be ones that I would that I know that are good and that I've used. But I'm sure there are a lot of good ones out there. I just haven't used all of them. So Joshua A says, I am shallowing out the club nicely. Now very solid contact. I'm having some left to right ball flights and every now and then almost slice. Can you tell me what I'm doing wrong? So it just means that your face is open. So if the face is open, what causes a slice is the face being open to your path. So if you're shallowing out the club, your path should be a little bit from the inside. So if you're hitting a slice, that means that your face is just open to that path. So you need to do the second part of the move. So the move is shallowing out the club, right? So shallowing out the club is, if anyone's not familiar, this is shallowing out the club, right? So that's what the move is. And that's what part of the move is. The second part of the move is this right here, the squaring of the club face. So you're probably shallowing out the club, but just leaving that face open. So what you got to do is turn that handle down as you're coming down into contact to get that face nice and squared up for you. So that's what I'd recommend working on. 1.2 from the move, where we're coming down here and we're getting that club face turned down to the ground and turning through. That's a great drill to work on to help you get that face closed. So really start working on getting that face to close down as you're coming into contact, and it should help out quite a bit to get rid of that slice. You want to work toward getting the ball to start to the right and curve to the left. That's what I'd really try to get working, get that face really closed. And then once you get that, then I would just start easing off of that. Ease off the shallowing, ease off the closing of the face. That's if you continue to work through the move drills, you'll be able to get that. All right, so we got about 7 minutes left. If we got any more questions, looks like we ran out of questions there. So if we got any more questions, I'll give you a minute or so. So Brian P says, so you use a rangefinder and not a GPS? Usually I'll use GPS like if it's on the carts. If it's already on the cart, I will use a rangefinder, I'll use the GPS, but I don't use any GPS on my phone or anything like that. So GPSs are pretty accurate, but now I'm not an expert on it, but it's my understanding that they can be a little bit off sometimes. Whereas we got a bunch of questions coming. It can be a little bit off at times, but a rangefinder, it's within 1 or 2 yards, like at most. It's plus or minus a yard typically. So if you're 160 yards out, GPS can kind of tell you. The other thing too is a lot of times if you're using GPS, it's giving you the yardage to the middle of the green. Now some courses have the flag sticks that they're positioning with the GPS, but even then it can be a little bit off. So if I had a choice, now GPS does definitely have its advantages. Like if you can't see the flag stick from where you are, it's going to be difficult to use the rangefinder, right? So that's what I'd be talking. So that's what I'd be looking at is using the rangefinder when you can, because it's going to be more accurate typically. Now, I've used the rangefinder and had the GPS on the cart, and it's been spot on exactly. But I know at times it can be off. But the technology's probably gotten a lot better since I last heard that. So Brian R says, working on hip rotation, should the arms be moving down as the hips rotate or stay high? The arms are going to be moving down as the hips rotate, but you may need to feel like the arms are staying up. So that could be more of a feel thing. If you're someone who's rotating and your arms are kind of coming with you too much, right? Your arms are going out too much in front of your body. You may need to feel like, okay, my arms, my hips are going, but my arms are staying back. But in reality, your arms will be going a little bit. So that'd be more of a feel thing for sure. So Chris G says, I tend to move forward to the target with my upper body, causing the ball to be really behind me at contact. Even concentrating on shoulder tilt. Is there another thought that could help? I'd recommend working on the stable fluid spine course. So in the stable fluid spine course, we work on getting our spine angled away at address, right? So I'd make sure first that your spine's angled away at address. An easy way to do that will be to just take the club, put it on the center of your chest and your belt buckle there, and then just tilt until that club kind of hits the inside of your leg. You can see I'm in a good spine tilt there. And now I want to maintain that tilt as I go to the top. So you want to shift your weight with your legs. You don't want to shift your weight with your upper body. It sounds like what you're doing is you're going up the top and you're shifting your weight with your upper body like this. You want to shift your weight with your legs. So get into your legs, shift your weight with your legs, and stay behind the ball. And that's what we work on in the stable fluid spine course. So to work on the stable fluid spine course, select the house icon. That'll take you to the home page, and then click the stable fluid spine course and work through the drills. So Richard H says, good morning. You mentioned solid contact and lag putting. I'm not always certain that I hit the putt in the sweet spot. What is a good way to practice center strikes with the putter face? A good way to practice it would be the gate drill. So if you go and put 2 tees, so on the green, take 2 tees and set them up the width of your putter, just a little bit more than the width of your putter. So basically you have like 1/8 of an inch of space on each side, right? So then you can put the ball right in between that, or you can use 2 balls. I like to use the tees because then you don't have to reposition the balls after you hit them. It just works a little bit better. So put 2 tees in the ground, the width of the putter, put the ball right in between them, and then hit some putts. If you hit the tee, that's going to give you an indication. If you hit the outside tee, that's an indication of a heel strike. If you hit the inside tee, that's an indication of a toe strike. So Steve A says, can you talk through wrist break on back and downswing? So as I mentioned earlier in the office hours, when I was talking about lag, the big mistake that people make is they try to get these wrists set at the very, very top of the swing. I would try to set these wrists as late as you possibly can. So I feel like you're wide. I'd even feel like you're wide at the start of the downswing and that you're setting that later. That feeling will likely result in something that looks more like that, like we see the tour players. But it's going to feel like you're going like this, right? If you're someone who's casting, I can just tell you that from experience. When I was working on lag and getting some more lag in my swing, I would go up to the top. I'd have this angle, and then that angle would slowly start to get bigger. Basically, I would look like this at the top. And then when I came down, I looked like this. So this angle just got slightly bigger. It's getting slightly bigger from the very, very start. So I had to feel like I was going up to the top like this, and then I was actually starting down with it wide, and then I was getting it to set much, much later, like I talked about earlier. But when I did that, my swing actually looks something more like this, right? So that's what you're going to need to feel like to get that to work better. So that's what I would feel like. You're super wide, and then you're pushing out as you're pulling in with your trail arm to create that lag, and you rotate through and get that good release of the club. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to go like that with our wrists when we go up to the top. So that's cupping the lead wrist and kind of bowing the trail wrist. We want that because you can see there that opens the face. I need to do the opposite, right? That gets me to where that face is nice and closed. So that way, when I get forward shaft lean at impact, it's squared up. The more forward, when you have forward shaft lean, that opens the face. So you need to square the face by closing it with your wrists. And that's what that is doing. If you go like that, that face is open, and now you're going to have to release the club early to get the face squared up, to get it closed. So those are really the angles that you want to be in. So I feel that wide, and then when you're going down, I try to get that to be as late as possible, and then release it through impact. All right, everybody, I got to go. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.